The Easter celebration. That evening, they gathered for the Passover feast and ate the roasted meat of the paschal lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Since Jesus had been incorporated that day as a son of the covenant, he was asked to recount the origin of the Passover, and this he did well. However, he somewhat embarrassed his parents by making veiled remarks questioning the slaughter of the sacrificial animals. Jesus considered whether it would be appropriate to celebrate the Passover without the slaughtered lamb. He was sure that the Father in heaven was not pleased with this spectacle of sacrifice. He contemplated in his heart instituting a Passover celebration without bloodshed. Jesus slept badly that night. His rest was severely disturbed by repulsive dreams of slaughter and suffering. His thoughts were confused, and his heart was torn by the inconsistencies and absurdities in the theology of the entire Jewish ceremonial system. His parents also slept little. They were seriously upset by the events of the past day. Their hearts were troubled by their boy's strangely determined attitude, which was foreign to them. They were both afraid to discuss these problems openly with him, so they avoided each other. The next day's temple services were much more acceptable to Jesus and greatly alleviated the unpleasant memories of the previous day. The next morning, Jesus visited his new friends in Bethany, and Lazarus took Jesus with him, showing him Jerusalem and its surroundings. Before the day was over, Jesus had discovered various places in and around the temple where meetings were held for teaching and answering questions. He found this a very fascinating place, and he resolved to participate in it. That Wednesday, Jesus received permission to go home with Lazarus and spend the night in Bethany. That evening, Lazarus, Martha, and Mary heard Jesus speak about temporal and eternal, human and divine matters, and from that evening, all three loved him as if he were their own brother. From their first temple visit, his parents noticed that he was often lost in thought. He would sit almost depressed with his youthful head in his hands. They had never seen such behavior from him before. They did not understand why his thoughts were so confused. They didn't quite know what to do with him, and Mary wanted to return with him to the safety of Nazareth as soon as possible. All this week, waves of spiritual illumination flooded Jesus' mortal consciousness, filling his human heart with loving compassion for the spiritually blind and morally ignorant multitudes. He surveyed the many pilgrims, souls who had gathered from so far away to seek something they could only discover within. Jesus pondered his problems, but when it came time to return to Nazareth, his youthful consciousness was still buzzing with contradictions, and numerous unanswered questions and unsolved problems crowded his thinking.